I traveled the banks of the river of Jordan to find where it flows to the sea. I looked in the eyes of the cold and the hungry, and I saw I was looking at me.
I wanted to know if life had a purpose and what it all means in the end.
In the silence I listened to voices inside me, and they told me again and again.
There is only one river, there is only one sea, and it flows through you, and it flows through me. There is only one people, we are one and the same. We are all one spirit, we are all one name. We are the Father, Mother, daughter, and Son. From the dawn of creation, we are one. We are one. We are one. Every blade of grass on the mountain,
Every drop in the sea,
oh, every cry of a newborn baby,
every prayer to be free.
Every hope at the end of the rainbow, every song ever sung
is a part of the family of woman and man. That means everyone. We are only one river, we are only one sea, and it flows through you, and it flows through me. We are only one people, we are one and the same. We are all one spirit, we are all one name. We are the Father, Mother, daughter, and Son. But from the dawn of creation, we are one. We are one. We are one. We are one.
Hi, welcome to Loving Light Hour. My name is Reverend Len. This is show 861, and it's about we're talking about personality. So as always, I hope you enjoy the show. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube under Loving Light Hour or Len Leonardson, and also we should be on demand. And we're on Saturdays at 7:30 on Channel 53, and Sundays at 8 o'clock on Channel 54. In case you've been missing us, moving us around every 6 months. So. We're grateful for being on Sundays, late at night at prime times. That's great. So you get a chance to see us. And, so we're talking about last time we were talking about personality and how that the main work that we have to become more spiritual, if you will, to become to raise in our consciousness, because the goal is to become more aware, to become here and now, but being aware of oneself in the present moment, and being aware of your thoughts, your feelings, your intentions, your fears, your worries, and all the different things that are going on, and being a witness to them, and not so much as the participant in that mini dramas that we have in our day-to-day existence. The personality part of it is a way of understanding and breaking ourselves down, because we seem to be solidified in this idea of I, what I am, and who I am, and what my name is, and that my name is, I am my name. That's who I am, that person. And we fail to be taught, and we fail to understand that. I mean, we fail to have that as any kind of a course in education of self-knowledge, that there is no one of us in there. There is no I that that we can count on to be there. Working on oneself is developing an authentic I. Is developing, is getting being true to your words and being true to yourself and being true to your beliefs. And once it's kind of in a way we're gearing ourselves to be a single I. But that in itself is futile work because we don't have the conscious power to, the question is, which I are you trying to become? The I that believes that you're that you have a profession, the I that's a father, the I that's a son, the I that's a brother, the I, all these I's jammed together into one person, into one body, and we erroneously identify, and we excuse this shift in personality, and we call them moods, or we call them just different feelings and different ways of being, different characters, and we have all kinds of ways of explaining that. Oh, I was just tired. Oh, yes, I know I behaved that way because I was hungry. So we attribute it and blame it onto something outside of ourselves instead of seeing it as actually a statement of reality of what we are, that we're that we don't have control over our so-called selves. That there are many selves, and they're pretty much regulated by inner and outer shocks. The inner shock would be the body gets to a certain physical, is pretty much run by the animal body. It has certain appetites and it has certain needs, and so that inner shock is the hunger is an inner shock, and that'll drive us into a personality of having to feed ourselves. And if we take away from that, then the sense of entitlement or the sense of need or the importance of this food that we have to have will be commensurate with the way what we display, of course, of anger or frustration or depression or to the degree that we understand the difference between desires and needs will be to the degree of how much we identify with, how much we kind of lose it and become, we even have a word for it now, we call it hangry. That it's now pretty much understood that when you're hungry and you're angry, that's okay. I mean, because, you're hungry, that's why you're angry, you're hungry. Instead of saying, well, it's the body that's hungry and it's the body that's probably feeling a mild discomfort of not having food, and most of us have never known hunger, and probably will never know hunger, God forbid. But we have these things where we have appetites, and the body's used to having a certain amount of food every day, every certain amount of time. Then when it doesn't get that on the pattern, then we have a personality shift. So we can come out of a very calm, conscious, aware, seemingly peaceful, aware being, and we can be agitated underneath and be angry. And as it progresses, then we can almost have a shift in what we know of personality. So the calm, peaceful, loving, understanding person all of a sudden becomes a very angry, irritable person. And we say, well, that's still the same me. It's just, I'm just angry now because I'm hungry. But that you could have worked at, you can work at that to understand that this is, and we do, we work on these things with the hunger and with sleep, and because these are the places where we get to wrestle control and power, because it's what we're saying. The other thing is what you feed, what you allow to be entitled. Your selfishness is commensurate with how much you feed yourself selfishness. And there's always striking that balance between starving oneself and punishing oneself and hurting oneself, and being gluttonous. I mean, there's always the balance in there. But what we found and what we studied is, you see, a study of personality, that there is a certain personality that you can identify with, that has to do with the it has to do with the feeding of food, getting food, eating, and there's another one that has to do with sleep, and there's another one that has to do with sex, and you can almost you can see the shifts in the person, the way you look, the way you feel, the color of your eyes or the color of your skin, your facial changes and stuff like that, and it's an interesting study of oneself, because it's always separate and conquer, break it down. We break it down into the fact that, how do I study myself? Well, you have to study yourself in parts and pieces, and you have to find areas where you can study yourself. And the best time to study oneself is when one is stressed and is up against something, and and most of that has to do with desires. And so the way to conquer desires is to deal with them. It's not to run away from them, or it's not the way to conquer food. Is not to cut out eating, because you can't do that. With drugs and alcohol, we cut them out, but that doesn't really cure the disease. It doesn't really cure the identification. It usually shifts into something else. As I said in the last program, it really is about turning to God, turning to some sort of a devotional understanding where you're starting to feed this sense of service, this sense of relinquishing one's control of one's will to a higher ideal, to a moral conduct, because that's what you can depend on. You can't really depend on your own, because you don't know who you are. You don't know who you are when you're that way. So the discipline then is to bring oneself under the control of a set of rules that you can that you can follow, that will give you, that will empower you. And of course, our ego reaction to that is giving up power, and that's where we wrestle. We wrestle with that, because it is, you have to ask yourself, who's holding onto the power, And you say, well, I am, and who are you? And you can almost hear the ego say, well, I'm Len, and I'm the one. There is only me. There's nobody else. Once you start saying that, then you're dealing with the false sense of self, the false self, because the real you knows that that the one you is God, and that has to do with service, and it has to do with devotion, prayer, meditation, compassion, giving, serving. That's the one that is you, and all the rest of them are just are personalities. And we're caught in them, and studying them, and being able to identify them and see them then as not actual people, but as just thoughts. They're thought patterns, but they're very powerful thought patterns. They're electrically charged storehouses, and their charge is strong enough to move you, to create. When you focus your mind and your thinking on having to have a certain food, whether it's a sugar or a coffee or alcohol or something like that, and you think about that and you identify with that, then it comes into a movement, into an emotion, and that emotion then comes into an action, and that action becomes into, creating an incident, and that incident, drinking, eating like that, strengthens that part of you. So you strengthen it, and it gets stronger, and seemingly it quiets down, and so you feel like that's manageable, and so we manage our addictions, and we manage our identifications. So we become the manager of the animal body and all of its desires and needs instead of the master. It's the master, and we're simply there as servant. We're serving it and keeping it quiet and keeping it calm and keeping it, we're having it get enough sleep and having it get enough food and having it get enough sex and having it have a sense of pride and a sense of entitlement and what it deserves to have, a sense of power and control. And the fact that all of this is necessary to some degree makes it more difficult. It's easier to break alcoholism as addiction than it is to break food addiction because, well, you have to eat. Yeah. And if you're getting your addiction from food, then, well, when do you can't stop eating because the animal body really does have to, at this level of our existence, we have to eat. We have to eat food, solid food, and it has to have certain nutrients in it, or the body will, do its thing. And that balance that we have to have, that that's the whole work on ourselves, is saying that this is what I'm here to do. I'm here to become aware of because self-knowledge is the key to breaking ignorance, because the ignorance that has us in the suffering, we want to know, why are we suffering? Why is there such suffering in the world? Why has God done this? Of course, well, God is if you take God and just make God into the universe, and you can say that the universe really hasn't done this. The universe is the universe. The earth is the earth, and it's got its part to play, whatever it's, or it's just a speck of dust out there. And so it isn't God's doing it, we're doing it. And you're the one that's, creating the suffering has to do with attachments that we have to certain things. Our attachments to food, and seeing it as self-gratification and self-soothing instead of fuel to keep the body healthy and to keep the vehicle so that we can practice our awareness and our service. And sleep, which is turns into a form of escaping, and sex, which is an addiction, can turn into an addiction, and of course self-preservation and survival, which can go as far as to kill, to protect oneself, or to or kill emotionally to protect one's ego self. And so there's all this confusion and delusion that works in these 4 areas that gets us, and where the personalities develop, because we've all got these desires, we all have these things as our driving forces. These are the drives that motivate all of us to the 4 fountains. How we deal with them, or how we ignore them, and the sense of control that we pull in our lives to keep these all balanced has to do with our freedom. This is where our freedom comes from. The more freedom we have of being addicted and attached to them and their patterns, the more adept we are to, say, going without lunch or missing some hours of sleep and not being hangry and being irritable and upset. The more that we see our sexual drives as drives of releasing energy, and bring love and compassion into that, and instead of just an addiction of having orgasms and hitting the pleasure buttons, the more we make it sacred. So we're making all this stuff sacred, and it's not about having living the life of a monk. It's about understanding ourselves and understanding that if we don't make it sacred, if we don't bring consciousness and awareness to it, then the animal body just does it and runs it. The more we allow the animal body to dictate how much sleep we have to have, and how much food we have to have, and how much sex we have to have, and how much safety we have to have, the more that animal body dictates that, the more we're at its mercy. And what happens to us or the people around us is basically, left up to the chance of how things work out. Instead, we want to work on the fact of becoming masters of ourselves. And the goal for becoming masters of ourselves is to become aware of that they're nothing more than just these selves are not, all they are is stimulus response, whether it's inner stimulus and response, there is nobody there. There's only this stimulus response. There's only hunger. There's only sex, sexual drives. These are just energies that are playing through us, playing through our bodies, and they're not us. And as we disidentify with that, as we work on that, we get there's a sense of opening and a sense of freedom from it, because then we have more time and more awareness. We spend our awareness isn't being zapped, our consciousness isn't being drained by our addictions. The addictions drain consciousness, because the addictions feed the asleepness, whether it's to food, whether it's to sex, whether it's to sleep, or whether it's to preservation, and the preservation can come in, is socialization. We socialize to preserve ourselves, to keep ourselves, to be included in the pack, to be included in the clan, to be included in society, so that we won't be outcasts, because if we're outcasts, we'll be eaten by bears and stuff like that. That's our primal thing. So we're here then to work on ourselves, to establish the fact that this is not me, this is my body's desires, and I can wait. I can wait. I don't have to eat right now. I don't have to go to bed right now. I can wait. I can change my schedule. I don't have to go to bed every night at 9 o'clock, at 11 o'clock, at 12 o'clock. I can change my schedule. I can go to bed a little bit later. So, yeah, but I got to get up at work at 7. So that is a problem, I know. You have to be pretty dedicated to this stuff, because all this stuff really sucks. It's really hard, It's like, why bother? It's not easy. It's a lot of trouble, and it doesn't really give you anything that I can see. So why bother? Just ignore it. Well, that'll be the issue that you'll have to deal with. There has to be a reason for doing this, which has to come from a realization that you have. So the reason why you're not doing this and working on sleep and working on sex and working on food and self-preservation, the reason why you're doing that is it hasn't hit you yet that you're out of control, that you're not in control, that these forces, that these drives basically run you, and that's never going to change unless you take back control. And when you do take back control, it seemingly, remember, there is nobody there, but seemingly it fights back. And sometimes what happens is that, you go against sleep, or the body just goes to sleep. Well, the thing to do then is that as soon as you wake up, get up. Don't let it sleep. If you're working on that, if you're going against it, it's trying to change your sleep patterns. But then, the medical system comes in and says, well, it's unhealthy to have bad sleep patterns, and all that's true. It really has to be there's really a sense of higher purpose in doing this thing. It really doesn't have any value in the world. That's the problem with spiritual stuff. It's nonsense. A lot of the spiritual stuff is nonsense. Nonsense. The world is about sense. It's about pleasure, feelings, taste, smell, sight, sound, all the sensations. So it's a sense thing. when something is nonsense, it's not about that. It's about another sense. It's about a sixth sense. It's about spiritual sense. It's about tapping into a higher energy. So we're in this lower energy, this material energy of food, sex, sleep, and self-preservation. We're in these lower centers of survival, the sexual chakra, and these are the lower chakras we're working in, where we're stuck there. This is the wheel. This is the karmic wheel. This is the wheel of life. And we break through that. We break out of that when we start moving into the heart center, and we start messing around with the power and control that the physical body, the physical animal self we have, has over our emotional and our spiritual body. We start wrestling control back from it. It's very selfish. So one of the first things we do to not feed it is we do service, and you'll find in any spiritual path that you go on or any group you go in, you have to serve, because that breaks the pattern of selfishness. You've been living a life of selfishness. When you go into a family, you find the thing you have to break in order to have a relationship is your selfishness. If you don't break your selfishness, then that is what will separate you. So we break our selfishness and we open ourselves up to another. When you have a family, that increases the amount of selflessness. And if you haven't been messing around and trying and testing your sleep patterns and stuff out, now you get to test them out. Now you get to see that you have to be able to go without sleep, because if you don't, the child will die. Or the child will develop some sort of a psychological problem, and it'll be your fault. It'll be your fault because you didn't feel like getting up in the middle of the night to take care of them. So you can see where it isn't. It may be artificial, but it's very practical to be able to go without. It's very practical to be able to go without food too, because sometimes if you're doing something, it requires you to keep doing it, not to break, and to go do lunch. You'll find that becomes really good in relationships. When you're in an issue, when you're in an argument, and you have to complete that, you have to finish that. You don't, in the middle of a long-standing thing where you guys are getting straight with one another, say, okay, well, let's take a lunch break and we'll come back at that. It doesn't work that way. First of all, you're not civil enough. You're enemies at the moment, and the enemies don't sit down at the table and eat. The best thing you do is go separately and eat separately, and come back, and you'll be worse off than you were before. And all the energy and consciousness that you gained the last couple of hours is gone. You have to start all over again. So you can see that. And in self-preservation, well, I mean, there's no limit to what the ego will do to be offended. As we grow in consciousness, we're less offended by what people say and think of us, and by if somebody comes up there and says that they hate, they think all bald-headed, gray-bearded guys are monsters and evil. It doesn't really hurt me, and it doesn't really disturb me, because I realize that they really need my help, they don't need my condemnation or fear. That anybody that thinks that way needs some help. I need to help them. So, see, because I've raised myself so far in consciousness that I no longer care either. That's the other thing, what they think. But you can see where that moving the bar back from their egos demand about what's okay and not okay to say about me, and how much of I will I defend? It's if I'm a Democrat or something, and you attack Democrats, and you attack me. If I'm an American, you attack the American idea, you attack me. All of that has to do with identification, and all of it has to do with survival in one sense, because you're identifying with the tribe, you're identifying with the clan. You see all this tribalism that's coming up, and all of this is feeding this sense of survival, of selfishness, and not only selfishness, they're not calling it selfishness anymore. Now it's it's the right thing to be selfish. It's the right thing to put me first, because if you don't, everybody will take advantage of you. And so you can see we're working on survival and working on being able to help others and give what you have. It's the Christian thing. This is the foundation of Christianity, is to give to others the way you'd like to be given to do unto others as you'd like to have them do unto you. Foundation, everything else is built on top of that. So if you're not practicing that, you're not really being a Christian. Kind of like, it's the key thing. Without that, you get nothing. Same with Buddhism and Islam too. They're all based on that thing of taking care of your brothers and taking care of your sisters, giving service. It's all service. If you're not serving, then you're taking. If you're not giving, you're taking. That's pretty much it. And you can say, well, I'm not taking. I'm not bothering anybody, and that's how you justify it. That's how we justify the fact that if you're not working on yourself, that doesn't mean you have to go and take in a bunch of homeless people. Maybe that is what you're supposed to do. I don't know. But, if you're working on yourself in your relationship and you're working on love and bringing love into your relationship, well, okay, that's good. That is feeding the consciousness. That's breaking selfishness at a core level. Because that's where you can break it. You can break it inside the home. It's the hardest place, but the only place where you really get a chance to break selfishness in the sense of real 24/7. And when you allow another person in and you care about them more than you care about yourself. And children come in and they help you out with that because it's a lot easier to care more about a child. They make it easier because they're innocent and they're helpless, and you get it. Your animal thing gets it. If I don't care about him getting food, if I don't care about him being clean and taken care of, then something's going to happen to him. And I have a self-preservation of species and preservation of my family, and I have to take care of. So I'm becoming selfish. I might not have the highest ideals behind the selfishness, but the acts are there. And you can purify them in the sense of seeing what kind of selfishness is around that, and just acknowledging it and identifying it. And say, well, I'm being this, but I'm doing this because they're going to grow up and they'll hate me if I don't. That's not the most noblest thing. But at least we're doing something. At least you're understanding consequences. You understand, yes, that's exactly true. They do grow up and they don't forget, and so they will remember everything. In one way or another, they'll remember it. So be careful what you say to them. Be careful what you do in front of them. They don't forget. So that's how we work on that. That's how we break down that. And as we work on that, we find that there's this persona, that we have certain personas, we have certain personalities. We found it interesting and helpful to identify with them as this is what my mother was like, this is what my brother was like, my father was like this, he said these things, and just to help us with the patterns, And you can get confused and actually think there really is a father inside of you, and it's not. It's just they're just thought patterns, or there's a mother inside. But these practices, I'm saying with somebody else, if you're in a relationship, you can easily see that, oh, you sound just like your father, Yes, he's his father. That's who's talking right now. His father's talking through it. There is no father. There's no spirit entity coming through. They're just programs. They're just tapes. They're indelibly imprinted on his hard drive, And if you're aware of them, they come up and you can laugh about them because, they're ridiculous. And most of them, they come from places like, my mother had one that we're all going to end up in the poorhouse, And I had an idea of where there was a little orphanage down the street, on the way into town. That was the poorhouse, and that's where I was going to end up in the poorhouse, And that thought will come up, especially during the earlier days where we didn't have a lot of money or anything like that. And Miriam, my mother, I could hear her come out and say, "Oh, keep this up. We're going to be in the poorhouse, there wasn't a poorhouse even then. The poorhouse was 100 years before. Back in England, there was a poorhouse, but that thing's, you can see that patterns, those tapes, that has to do with fear. It has to do with only believing in this reality. That has to do with not understanding the laws of giving. That it's in giving that you receive. It's in giving you create more. It's believing that in holding on to and in keeping and in amassing, we get more, and that simply is not true. It's not a law. There's no law. That law, it doesn't. There's no law in nature that's like that. And whatever you have, whatever you store up, whatever gets stored up, it has got pressure on it to be let go of. A lake is a storing up of water, but there's, no matter what happens, there's pressure on that lake for the water to go out, to go to the sea, to go into rivers. The river has pressure to go to the sea. It's not. There is no storing up. The oceans are storing up, but they have pressure to go up into the air. And so there is nothing in nature. There's nothing out there that really, on the end, shows that storing and keeping has any good consequence. There's a thing, well, if I store and I keep, then I'll have some later on. And that's what drives us, because that is true. In the wintertime, if you store up, you have food in the winter. And when we take that and we generalize that into our life, then it becomes a fallacy. Some things are true in a microcosm. Some things are true in a certain atmosphere. You think, yes, it's good, don't waste food, store it and put it away. And so you'll have it for another day. Yeah. But when you take that and generalize that, and you make it into a bigger sense of that, we have to keep enough for ourselves, because the others will come in. And the others will take it away from us. And as long as we have others, then we have that fear that the others are going to come and take it away, and we have war. If my brother and my sister, if that's who they are, well, then I have a moral and a connection to give to them, to let them have it, to share with what I have with them. That's my goal. My goal is not to amass and to acquire wealth, because that breeds fear, and it breeds a sense of selfishness that creates an energy that we live in. We're going to lose it. When we freely give it, when we freely share it with others, we don't have as much as we would like to have, but we have enough, and they have enough, and then there's a sense of peace that prevails. And as a generalization, I know it's difficult in practice, but those are the rules. And it isn't so much to take care of the animal. That these are the spiritual rules. This is what you're here to do. You're here to learn this as a Christian, as a Buddhist, as a Muslim, as a Jew, as a Jain, as whatever you are, a Zoroastrian, as a Wiccan, whatever you do, we're here to learn the lesson to do unto others as we'd have them do unto ourselves. To give, that giving is how we receive. That's it. That's what we're here to do. Because that breaks down our selfishness. That breaks down our sense, our identify of me, that there's a me and there's a you. It opens it to that there's an us, there's a we. And from the us and we, there's us. There is no others. There's just us. We're here. We're here on the planet. There's just us. There's life. When we're life on the planet, then life is all one. And we care and nourish all life, and all life matters. That's different. And how we demonstrate that all life matters, is the degree to which we're applying these laws. How free do you want to be? Some people don't want to be free. So, well, all life matters except the animals. Animals don't matter. So, well, you're missing the point. That all life matters. Well, yeah, but insects and worms don't matter. Well, actually, they do. It matters a lot. Without them, there's a food chain thing that goes on. There's basic ecology, and it's what all ecology teaches us and stuff. So all life matters. Yeah, all life matters. And to what degree it matters and stuff like that has to do with, again, if we're into degrees, and you'll play around with that. But at some point in time, we get to the place where it all matters. There's a sense of you of unity and oneness, where you feel the connectedness of the cockroach, the centipede and the millipede, where you feel the essence of life in them, and you're just not that eager to take them. Sometimes you still do, because we're still identified with the fact that it's going to hurt us and kill us and all that stuff, and so we do that. We do take their lives, and well, that's some more karma for you. You'll pay for it. Don't think you're going to get away with it. You killed the cockroach. That's the act. But not going to be the end of eternity for you. But that's one of those things. It's a hard thing to do without identifying with killing, and you've got enough of that under your belt over the endless lifetimes you've lived. You've killed enough people, enough beings. You don't need to add any more killing onto your slate. But there you go. You just did another one. It's not as much as the mother that you killed when you were, back in lifetime 800 zillion ago. But it's just one more. When you look at it that way, it's again, you can be humorous and amusing, but it's a reminder that life is sacred. It's all sacred, and why bother? Why do it that way? You don't have to do it that way. You say, oh, well, I killed that centipede and he's going to go bite somebody else. No, he's not. You pick him, throw him outside. There's thousands and thousands of them out there. You only see one or two. You don't need to kill it and destroy it. You can take it and throw it outside. Even ways we take a plastic cup, put the cup on the centipede, slide a piece of cardboard underneath that centipede, take it on and throw them out into the woods. It's sacred. It means you're having some sacred. You feel good. There's part of you that feels good. And there's a part of this. Oh, this is awful. He's going to go bite some child or something like that. And that's your mother or your father talking. Their mother and father. Their mother and father. The survival. The me first thing. When life is sacred, all life is sacred. And we deal with that not as a moral whip, but as an awakening tool. All of this is about awakening. It's not about saying, well, I'm a bad person because I've done this, or I'm a better person because I don't do this. I'm a superior, better person because I'm vegan, and I don't eat animals. The people who do eat animals are savage monsters. You can just hear that way of thinking. You can just feel it. There's something wrong with that way of thinking. I mean, the moral superiority, the fact that you're vegan, and therefore that makes you a more moral person than the person that eat meat. It has a major flaw inside of that. It's called judge not lest ye be judged. And don't judge people. You can take a position that killing animals is not necessary and all that stuff, and that's okay. I mean, and helping people to wake up to the fact that there's other alternatives to eating meat, and that there's a lot of people, like hundreds of millions, billions of people that don't eat meat and do very well. They would be in India, a lot of them in India, and in other countries where we have the Hindu religion. A lot of people, a billion or so people. And then there's all the poor people that can't afford meat. They do pretty well on grains and beans and stuff like that. So meat isn't a necessity. Therefore, you're raising consciousness. You can see how you can take it. You can see how the ego takes it, and it always wants to always wants to be superior. Always wants to be elevated. And say, you take a beautiful sacred idea, and it just says, what a wonderful person I am. That I don't kill insects, and what a really great soul I am that I don't eat meat, and that sort of thing. Okay, well, there you go. You got some work to do. Don't worry about it. You can go offend some more people with your superiority, and you know. I always remember with Lynn, we got the Buddhist principle that whatever people give you, you eat. You know, and I know we went up to my parents' house, and and I had been telling them, for years, how we're vegetarians, vegan, and we were vegan. We didn't eat, just soy. We did soy products and everything for years, and we went up to them, and my mother and my father, they were testing us. Well, wait a minute. Oh, you don't eat meat. Oh, that's right. We forgot, And we said, that's okay. We'll eat the meat. That's fine. You paid it. You made it. You've given it. We'll eat it, And bowled them over. They didn't understand that. And saying, you gave to us. You made a meal for us. I'm not going to discredit you. I'll make that meat sacred, by accepting the fact that in some humility, instead of putting my values on you, I'll accept the fact that you gave that out of love. Well, how could I refuse to eat that? I was pretty proud of us for doing that. I'd probably have to pay some points for that, being proud, but there's no winning. No matter how good you are, the ego comes in and claims something of it, and it has to be at some point, later point, let go of that. You can't even have pride about being selfless and stuff like that. Because who's being proud? What's being proud, and why? What part of you is being proud, and did you want to become that part, or did you want to be free of all the parts? You want to be closer and closer to compassion, closer and closer to higher consciousness, and which is loving more than not. That would be the goal. The goal is to be loving more than not loving, to be happy more than to be sad and suffering, to put suffering in its place. An inevitable part of life is suffering. The extent of the suffering, a lot of it has to do with our reaction to suffering, our reaction to pain, our reaction to our addictions and not getting our addictions. It's not a. I have to stay right there. I'll be right back. Come on, you can come up. My dog was suffering. He's been inside his pen too many hours, so we let him out. He got a bath today. Another form of suffering, suffering for me too. They have to wash Pomeranians. Anyway, let me get this. Hold on to him. We have to at some point in time we keep our awareness on what we're doing here. We're trying to free ourselves. We're trying to free ourselves from suffering, from the suffering of endless craving, from the suffering of fear, from the suffering of addictions. And we're trying to find different ways to free ourselves, and we find that in order to do that, we have to help others, because in my freeing you, I free a part of me. I have to practice compassion and understanding, and I understand that you are the way you are because of an endless array of circumstances, and my judging you or feeling superior to you or any of that is really, really confusing matters for you and me. And and for me, it's not identifying with and acknowledging the fact that you are another me, and that I would be just like you if it weren't for certain circumstances and for certain decisions. And maybe I had some strength in one time to make one decision, to make a turn, because I made that turn in the road. I didn't get, a broken leg or a broken arm, or something like that. Metaphorically speaking, but sometimes we take bad turns, and we get there's a lot of karmic stuff that happens when you take that turn that you have to shed and you have to let go of. Sometimes you do something, and a lot of times it's just a decision. It's just a decision to honor somebody and to not honor them. And by honoring them, you didn't create a bunch of suffering for them, and you didn't create a bunch of suffering for yourself. You passed an addiction. You passed a test that the universe lays these tests out before you. It's not personal. They're there. Once you hit this body, this mind-body experience, the tests are laid out for you. They're just like you can just follow the path, and the path will lead you through a series of tests that you have to pass in order to continue. And if you don't pass, you get stuck. And one of the tests is the tests of giving and selflessness. If you don't work on that, and if you don't pass it, well, you're stuck. You can be 70, 80, 90 years old, never pass the test. Which and it kind of locks you into a teenage, kind of a non-adult place. There's a segment of you, there's a part of you, the part of your brain, a part of your consciousness that just simply has not evolved. And unfortunately, we fall to our lowest common denominator in the end. And our work was to elevate ourselves to our consciousness, which is not to ignore our shortcomings, which is not to ignore our addictions. It's to be free of them. And you don't get free of addictions by ignoring them. You get free of addictions by addressing them and just seeing them for what they are. What are the drives beneath them? What is it that, what am I telling myself that I'm getting out of this thing? What am I getting out of this thing? Why am I running? What am I running away from? What am I trying to drug? What am I trying to numb? We say, well, no, I just want to feel good. Why don't you feel good now? What is it that you're dealing with that you're not feeling good about? And then we deal with that and find out. You say, well, I'm unhappy. Well, what are you unhappy about? Well, I'm unhappy about being in this relationship. Well, what's unhappy about the relationship, and what can you do to to connect and to release this energy? What is it that's separating you? The goal is unity. The goal is oneness. So what's keeping you apart? What are the behaviors that you're doing? Not spending any time with one another. Well, that'll cause separation. That'll strengthen individuality, and individuality strengthens ego, and ego strengthens selfishness, and it puts a burden on you, because at some point in time, in order to break through this, you have to be doing selfless service, letting God control your life and the will of God instead of them. Well, and what this is doing is feeding a sense of self, and that sense of self then separates you. And when you're separate from people that you love, when you're separate from love and from unity, from family, from all that stuff, stuff of unity and working together, then you're left defenseless and you're alone. And then the demonic forces that are out here, of fear and worry and delusion and confusion, they get a better shot at you because you have no defenses. You have nobody to check in with, to ground with. You're all by yourself. And that's why we need to be in groups, and why we need to be together, so that we can help one another defend the lunacy and insanity that we tend to go into. It's a rigged deck. It's a rigged game where the game is rigged. We're supposed to be together. The world is driving us into apartments and apart, but the world is what it is. It's a place of delusion and confusion and suffering. So, the more you're a part of that world, the more you're trapped into that. The more you're not a part of that world, the more you're in oneness and togetherness, and the more unified you are with yourself and with others, then the more you're on the spiritual path. The more you serve, the more you receive. The more you serve, the higher you go in your chakras. But the service always starts and has to be the strongest in the home, in the relationship, in the parent, the mother, father, husband, wife relationship, or significant other relationship, where you take on another person, you let them in, you become them. I am another you, and you practice that on a daily basis, where you care about them, and you care about what they need, not so much about what you need. And you balance that out somehow or other, because it's someplace in there you have to care about what you need also, but the primary thing we have to do is caring about what the other person needs. And then we're caring about what the other person needs, and we open ourselves up to the spiritual forces that are there. And when we don't, when we have to go do our yoga, and there's nothing wrong with yoga, I have to go do our meditation, there's nothing wrong with meditation, or whatever other spiritual practices we have, whatever the rites and rituals we have, and we have to go do those, and they're the force, and they're the substance, they're the foundation of our spirituality. It's wrong. That's all. It's not the fire. They're just practices. They're just reminders that there's more to you. The foundation is the relationship you have. The foundation is in the family, is in the relationship. If you're alone, you have to have a relationship with God, and it has to be really strong. If you have nobody to bounce off of, you have nobody to be with, it's really hard to get into to spiritual, to be a spiritual being, to identify as spiritual, because the spirit has to do with giving and serving and being with another being and open oneself up. We'll talk some more about this in future programs, and there will be more programs coming up. But as I always say, if you want love in your life, if you want to be free of the suffering of being alone, then you have to give. You have to give. You have to give the love out. You find something, someone, somewhere, something to give. And as you give, you get the love as it comes through you. And you create a place of love in you. So, as always, aloha.
We are all one spirit. We are all one day. We are Father. We are Father. Mother, daughter, and son. Mother, daughter, and son. From the dawn of creation. We are one and the same. We're one and the same. We are all one spirit. We are one and the same. We're one and the same. We are all